Hi, Tracy Hugelmeyer here from VintagepreneurUniversity.com, where I help vintage sellers start, grow, and scale their business on Etsy. I also own my own vintage business on Etsy, Rustic Guy, that I've had since 2013. And today I'm super excited to get going with another episode of Friday Feedback. That's where one of our Etsy Junkies volunteers to get a free review for their shop in hopes to help other sellers out and get a little feedback for themselves too. If you'd like to get your own free review, all you need to do is become an Etsy Junkie, and I include all the information for you in the notes below on how to do that. Without further ado, I am super excited to introduce you to Linda at Smith's Attic. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into her shop and see what we can all learn, because having an Etsy vintage business is all about learning and continuing to learn and making changes as you go and being adaptable. The one thing, disclaimer, that I want to make sure I give is you never want to change everything at once. You want to be very strategic about what changes you make so you can keep an eye on what's working and what's not working. And also, don't change the things that are already working for you, no matter what I or anybody else says, okay? If something's working for you, then keep doing that thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump behind my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so here we are in Linda's lovely shop, and she has been selling on Etsy since 2018 and has had 178 sales, which is super great for a 1 to 2 year old shop. Be very super proud of that, Linda. You have to remember that even though it might feel like you're struggling and you're not sure if you're doing the right things, that having 178 sales selling vintage on Etsy is way above the norm than not. So what I mean by that is a lot of people get started and then they give up, or they don't even get started, or they, they struggle and don't get anywhere. And so when you do have sales, even though it feels like it's slow for you, remind yourself that you have come a long way. You've surpassed a lot of people already, and you should be very proud of that. And also, you should keep going, because 178 sales, that's 178 people that you convinced they should purchase something from you. And by the way, I'm not saying at all that Linda's struggling. I don't know that. I don't have those statistics, but I just know that it's a very common thing for vintage sellers to struggle with. But I think oftentimes they overlook how much they have succeeded up until the point that they're at. And it helps to kind of remind yourself that what you have accomplished is no small thing, and be very proud of that. Okay, so enough on that. Linda is selling, according to her shop title here, unique, rare, collectible items for you or for gifts. And because she has her sales showing here, I can kind of use this information to take a look and see what it is that's actually selling for her, because that is always helpful information for everyone. When you can kind of look introspectively and see what's selling best for you, that can be an indication of what you might want to shift your focus to or sell more of. So this is really important data for everyone to have. And even obviously, if you're not showing your sales to everybody, you still have that information for yourself. So everybody can look at their own sold items and pick up on those cues. So what I noticed right away is a lot of her items are very collectible. And one thing to remember that is about vintage that I don't think that, or that I think is sometimes overlooked, is that all vintage is not created equal, right? I mean, I love vintage. I'm sure that you love vintage, but what we love about vintage might be very different. And that's totally fine, because there are different markets for vintage. And that is why honing in on and figuring out your niche is so important, because once you understand who your market is, then you can figure out, exactly how to market and who to sell to, right? All right, so a lot of collectible items, a lot of dishware, china, porcelain, that type of thing, and also like collectible animals and figurines. That's what I'm seeing as a primary seller for your shop. So sometimes that insight can help you make decisions on the direction that you want to take moving forward, if that makes sense. Okay, and then also a quick note on your shop title here. I would get more specific about what you put in this line because it is part of a Google search, and in optimizing this little line here, which is called the shop title, with your broad keyword terms for your shop, you're optimizing for a Google search. So, and other outside search engines, I should say. So once you've decided like what those broad keyword terms are, let's say it's vintage collectibles, vintage rare collectibles, or vintage fine china. And I'm taking that information because you have a lot of fine china in this section. That's what you want to put right here. What are the broad keyword terms for your shop in a general sense? And in the same vein, I would recommend updating your shop titles just to include the word vintage, for example, in front of a lot of these, like vintage pottery, vintage figurines, vintage angels. That'll help with your outside search engine optimization as well, because Google does look at all areas of your shop. So if you can more specifically indicate what it is that you offer, then they're more likely to send shoppers your way. And then make sure that you sprinkle those broad keyword terms in different places in your shop as well, like your about section, your item descriptions. It doesn't have to be in every item description, but the more places you can reinforce what your broad keyword terms are for your shop, the better job that you will do for optimizing for that outside search engine. Now, as far as we know, Etsy does not look at these other places in our shop, but we want to try and optimize for both Etsy and outside search engines so we can bring in all the traffic possible. Okay, great job at including a really adorable smiley face photo here so people can see who you are and they can really connect with you. I think that's a great thing to do on Etsy because it's such a unique platform that allows us to have these personal connections. So that's always my recommendation there. And let's take a look at, I was noticing Linda's reviews are just awesome. So many people are loving her packaging and the experience. Those are very powerful words. So this is, you always want to strive for an excellent experience. So great job, Linda, there. Obviously shipped on time and packed very well are important too, but an overall excellent experience tells me so much about your business and your brand, and you always want to strive for that. So be very proud of that. A quick tip about reviews: pay attention to what your customers are saying, because sometimes there are some important clues in here about, things you can use as keywords. Like let's say they tell you what they're using it for. Pay attention to that because you can pull that information out and use it to sell your future items. So this is an example, although it's kind of vague. Your customer is telling you they purchased this as a Christmas gift. So you might not have thought of this being used as a Christmas gift, but maybe you should start using Christmas gift on more of your items because, like I said, that's kind of a general keyword term, but just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going here. When you have keywords like that, you want to pick them out and make sure you're using them if they apply to other items, because your customers are telling you what they're using it for. And unless it's something completely obscure, it could be what other people are hoping to use your items for as well. So pay attention to those comments. And even if somebody is telling you, in a conversation what they're planning on using your item for, it may be something you hadn't thought of before. So you can use that information to your advantage as well. Here's another example for you. So I found this review where it talks about this little pot is so beautiful and flawless. Thank you. I'm going to use it as a toothpick holder for my husband. So I'm sure that Linda didn't think of toothpick holder as a keyword, or maybe she did, but it might give her an idea to use toothpick holder on some of her other items like this for a keyword, or maybe not toothpick holder, maybe it could be like a bathroom organizer or, different things like that. The point is to pay attention to your customers, not only what they're buying, but what they're saying, because they give you very important insight and clues. Okay, I don't see an about section, which is totally fine, but at some point, if you decide to add an about section, just make sure that you put some information about your story and what makes you special. People like to see that on Etsy. So, if you get around to it at some point, I would recommend that. And your shop policies are up to date and they're filled out, which is great. That's going to get you that extra push that Etsy tells us we'll get if we fill out our policies and use the template that they provide. So that's great. My only comment on your policies is your returns and exchange policy. You probably already know by now that I'm super pro accepting returns, exchanges, and cancellations. Obviously, it's always going to be your decision because it's your business. But I promise you, if you do decide to accept exchanges and returns and cancellations, you will increase your opportunities for getting that conversion and turning more browsers into buyers. So just think about that. Not everybody is going to look at your policies, but the point is anytime you can take away a potential barrier for a purchase, that's only going to help your results in the long run. But you, of course, have to weigh whether it's worth it to you. So one thing that I recommend is to think about how many people that you've had up to this point that have asked you if they can. Let's say that you've never had taken exchanges or returns. How many people how many issues have you had, or people ask you, hey, can I return this, or can I exchange this, or can I cancel this? And that'll give you a clue too as to whether this will even be an issue for you if you do decide to take them. Because, how many returns and exchanges are you actually going to get, and is it worth it to just go ahead and deal with the ones that you are going to get to potentially increase your conversions and your sales? And side note, if you're wondering what a conversion is, because sometimes I jump ahead of myself in terms and jargon, conversion would be how many sales you get compared to how many views you get. So if you have a lot of views but no sales, that can mean you have a lower conversion rate compared to if you have more sales per views ratio. And in Etsy terms, it's probably more accurate to say visits rather than views, so as not to confuse anyone there. Okay, I think that looking at your photos now, I think your photos are really, really good. I can tell that you're using some kind of, it looks like light box background. I could be wrong there, but a lot of these photos are perfect. Like this right here, the lighting, the way that it's, the composition and how you can see the entire item and the detail of it. It's really, really good. The only recommendation that I have on some of your photos is just to work with the thumbnail so that you're showing the whole item. For example, like this item compared to this item, the way it's centered here, and you can see the whole cup is a better way than like this one that's a little bit off the frame. But it's not a bad photo. It's just I'm trying to show you the comparison here, that this is probably more of what you want to shoot for, no pun intended. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this item for a review. And I have a special place in my heart for these types of teacups because my grandma had a teacup collection. So it reminds me, of my childhood. I actually even inherited a couple of her teacups and I just love them. So anyway, let's click on that. And side note, whenever you can bring in those nostalgia feelings, which a lot of people get with vintage and especially these types of collectibles, use that in your item descriptions. Talk about how that it's just like grandma had or something like that. Because as you saw right there, just with me, it brought back all the feels just thinking about that. And when you can connect a shopper to a feeling like that, it's a powerful sales technique as well. Like everything else, or like anytime you're using a sales technique, though, you want it to be authentic. You don't want to mention something that's not true or sounds sleazy in any way, but do it in an authentic way that people will really connect with. All right, so starting with the title up here, I think this title looks really, really good. You have some great keywords in here, and you don't do a lot of repeating, so you're really optimizing that space. I noticed, for example, that you use saucer and china, which are two different keywords to describe what you're selling. You also use purple and violet, which are two different terms to describe the color of the item and two different ways that somebody might be searching for your cup. So I think that's really good too. You may not need this keyword brilliant, or maybe you can put that in your description instead, unless that's not meaning the type of brilliant I'm thinking of, and that's actually something somebody searches with, then by all means ignore me. And then excellent condition, kind of same thing. That might be something you want to put in your description. Unless you think that people are actually searching for that, then definitely leave it in your title. So if someone would say excellent condition, saucer in a search, then it's not a bad thing then to have that in your title. But if that's not something they would normally be searching for, and that's of course up to you to kind of look at your own keywords and see what people are searching for. Since you sell other teacups and other china, you probably have a lot of that information in your stats already, the keywords that people are using to find your items. So you may have already done your research and realized that that is a good keyword for you. And so in that case, I say leave it, but otherwise put it down in your description. Okay, then on to your description. This is an absolutely stunning set. Vintage 1975 Royal Albert Bone China Footed Teacup and Saucer. I'm not going to say that word right. Provincial flowers, purple violet on black with brilliant gold trim. So maybe brilliant is the right term there. So just kind of ignore me. The cup and saucer are deeply scalloped. The handle has a uniquely designed shape. And then the cup measures blah, 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 blah. Okay. So that you're using your keywords in a natural way here is perfect. And, you talk about how it's stunning and you're really drawing light to that. I think that that's a great start to an item description. I would probably move the measurements down a little bit, just actually separate it out from this paragraph and maybe label it as approximate dimensions or item dimensions or something like that, so that somebody can easily find that information. If they, don't read the entire description, they can just kind of scan to the information that they need. And then you talk about who it would make a great gift for, which is awesome because you're helping people to see how it can be used in their life, or in this case, the life of somebody that they care about. And then I think your little disclaimer here about how all items are vintage and may show some signs of age is written very well and very professionally. So I think that is great as well. Notice Linda doesn't put anything here to turn it negative. Like, she doesn't say it's up to you to decide, if the condition is good enough or something like that. And sometimes I see that, I'm sure you've seen it as well. And that puts a negative spin on something where it's not necessary and you want to keep that out at all costs. So I really like how she, includes the information in a professional way and leaves out the negative spin that I sometimes see included. And then I think that, your tags are really good. There are no one-word tags. And the only thing is sometimes you're repeating some words like tea set. Right here, it's under tea cups and sets. And I think that might be the one that Etsy automatically fills in. So you might not have even realized that. But if you need to put another keyword in here, for example, if you need more space, you could remove that one because you're basically repeating what's already there, and that would free up another keyword or another tag to use for more keywords. That's just a kind of tip if you hadn't already thought of that, or if you need more space for keywords. I like how you're changing this up. So instead of saying like gold rim and scalloped rim, you say gold trim and scalloped rim, and that's really good because you're mixing up your keywords so that you can attract more potential interested buyers. Lastly, I'm just going to take a look at her pictures here. She includes a ton of excellent detailed photos. You can see everything you could possibly want to see about this. I'm sure she would have additional photos if there was some type of chip or something to point out whatever it is that a buyer would need to know about this. The only thing that I noticed when looking at her pictures is she's using a little stand there, and just so that you can get ahead of your buyers and head off any misunderstanding about whether or not that is included in the purchase, I would probably just state that in your description. And a good way to do it really easily is just, accessories are not included. In your case, you might be even more specific because the only accessory you're using is a stand. So you might just say, the stand is for display purposes only and is not included. Something like that would be perfectly fine and acceptable, and could get ahead of a misunderstanding that a buyer might think they might get that when they order this, or just answer a question. Okay, so I'm going to link to Linda's shop so you can all go check it out. And thank you, Linda, for volunteering in your shop. You're doing an amazing job. Be super, super proud of yourself. Again, if you want to find out how you can get your own free review for your Etsy vintage shop, just check out the notes below. It shows you how to become an Etsy junkie. It's super simple. And we'd love to have you over in our free Facebook group, which is one of the ways you can become an Etsy junkie, by the way. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and click the little bell as well so you get notified whenever a new video comes out. Thank you so, so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Bye!